What's up, guys? It's your boy Sean Hudson. Today, I'm going to be reading another chapter from my book by any means. And for those of you that are new to this series that I'm doing, I'm going to be reading a chapter from my books and then tell you why I feel it's important. Each chapter is important. And you guys can join discussion. You can hit me up on Facebook under the I Am Sean Hudson Facebook page, or hit me up at RBG Literature on Twitter. Also, you can hit me up on the website IamSeanHudson.com. Let's get to it. Chapter 2. After handling his business, Jamal walked across the street to a local restaurant called CeeLo's Cafe, which was one of his favorite spots to eat at. He noticed that a dice game was going on right outside the restaurant, which created temptation for Jamal to rob the participants, but he ultimately decided not to be greedy, as he knew he would be rewarded for his deeds later on. He waited online to make sure that his order was right, and he was hoping that it wouldn't take long as his stomach was growling. "Can I take your order?" the cashier asked. "Yeah, I want shrimps with chicken and some honey mustard to go with it," Jamal said. "Is that all?" she asked. "Yes," Jamal answered. He then pulled out a knot of money, unaware that everyone in the restaurant was staring at him. A group of thugs who were standing around by the entrance began to wonder who was the man with the giant knot of dough, and where was he from, and what crew he worked with. "Yo, have you ever heard or seen this nigga in the projects before?" one of the thugs asked grown Jamal. "Yeah, I had seen him over here every now and then. I heard that he was robbing niggas or killing them for money or some shit," the other thug said, watching Jamal's movements intensely. Jamal could tell that some of the guys were grilling him and were starting to plot, so he decided to take a seat at one of the tables while flashing his nickel-plated 9, which was in his waistband. "These niggas better think twice before scheming on me," Jamal thought to himself. As soon as the two thugs saw the hammer on Jamal's waist, they knew that he wasn't playing around and decided to go back to the dice game. A few minutes later, Jamal's order was ready. "Sir, your order is ready," the cashier said. "How much is it?" Jamal asked. "That'll be $15.41, the cashier said. Jamal pulled out his wad of money again and gave the cashier a $20 bill. "Keep the change," Jamal said, grabbing his food and walking out of the restaurant. As Jamal walked towards the seething death trap known as the Saquon housing projects, a group of thugs were in front of his building, walking around trying to holler at a group of women that were walking by. A devious smile appeared on Jamal's face as that same temptation came back, as he wanted to rob the young men. "Come on, Jamal, stop being greedy," he said to himself. As the group of ladies walked past him, one of them waved to him, but he didn't even notice it, as he kept his head down, trying not to look at the young men who he wanted to rob. He walked up to the building door, pulled out his key. He quickly stuck the key in the door, causing the chime to sound off. As the door opened, he was now inside of his building. The flickering of the ceiling lights, the foul odor of the urine by the mailbox made him feel as if his building was more like a zoo rather than an actual residence. "Niggas is fucking disgusting. I never understand what causes a motherfucker to piss in the lobby of his own building," Jamal said, shaking his head back and forth. As he began walking up the stairs, he was worn out completely, as he dragged his feet up each and every single step of the way. The thoughts of the various shattered dreams and failed attempts of escaping the pits of poverty plagued his mind, as he also took notice of the blood, sweat, and tears of those that had the blessing of escaping such a treacherous and wicked place loomed through his brain as he continued on his way. "One day, I'm gonna move the fuck out of here," Jamal said to himself as he looked around the hallway. As Jamal neared his apartment door, he heard the shallow screams of those who died trying to escape this place but ultimately failed. He then walked into his apartment and looked around and checked to make sure that no one had broken into his home before he set his food on the old tattered stove and took his coat and boots off. "Home sweet home," Jamal thought to himself, looking around his house. Surprisingly, Jamal kept his home very clean. He couldn't stand it when he saw how other people's homes were infested with roaches, rats, bed bugs, or other things that he found very disturbing. Jamal then removed his hoodie and his Teflon vest before tossing them onto the burgundy sofa in his living room. He then took off his Timberland boots at the door. He then walked towards the fridge and grabbed his Formula 50 vitamin water. As he sat down while listening to his iPod, he then looked at all the awards that he got as a young kid that filled the wall unit in his living room. He then became very teary-eyed when he looked at the picture of his parents back when they were alive. The wretched memory of his parents' death has forever been engraved in his memory till this very day. Jamal remembered the day that he found out about his parents' death like it was yesterday. He was in the 11th grade at the time. His teacher, Mr. Robertson, was teaching his history lesson when the principal, Mrs. Matthews, had came in and asked for Jamal to step outside to speak with her. "Listen, Jamal, I don't know how to tell you this, but your parents were killed in a tragic car crash this morning," Miss Matthews said with sympathy in her voice. Jamal just kept shaking his head before running out of the building. This ultimately led to Jamal skipping school and eventually dropping out. He felt that with his parents no longer around, what would be the point in continuing his education? To make matters worse, his own family wouldn't even allow him to come to the funeral, thus making him feel abandoned and betrayed by his own flesh and blood. He still remembered his aunt's harsh and insensitive words till this very day as well. "Boy, if your mother and father could see how you turned out, they'll be rolling in their graves, boy. You're the reason that they're dead. You weren't shit then, and you damn sure ain't shit now," his aunt barked. Despite how his aunt felt about him, he still managed to keep a close relationship with his cousin, Mike Green, who was an aspiring basketball player. Well, that wasn't until Jamal began running the streets while Mike was beginning his college basketball career. Since those dark days in Jamal's life, he's hated his family with a passion till this day because of how poorly they treated him. Not too long after his family disowned him, Jamal knew he needed money fast, and a job at McDonald's wasn't going to get the bills paid on time. At the age of 17, he bought a Snub Nose 38 special with what little money he had left. The power that he felt once that gun was in his hand was unimaginable. At the age of 18, he went on to rob Catholic school kids for their lunch money, iPods, cell phones, and anything they viewed as valuable. Once robbing Catholic school kids no longer quenched his thirst, he then began robbing guys on his block that were always flossing their watches, chains, rings, and even some of their whips. That lasted longer than his previous fix, but at the age of 19, he would later on start to rob well-known hustlers of their stash and their product. Meanwhile, in the Edenwald housing projects, a well-known kingpin by the name of Lamont had just gotten word that his man Slim was robbed and shot by some stick-up kid before being rushed to Jacoby Hospital. "How's Slim holding up, Lamont?" asked in a concerned tone of voice. "The doctors ain't telling me shit," Tracy said, yelling through the phone, with tears rolling down the right side of her face. Tracy was 37 years old while standing at 5'1", with jet black hair. She weighed 159 pounds, a caramel complexion, small waist, and would have been easily mistaken for the R&B singer Sade. If you looked up the word loyalty, then a picture of Tracy would surely appear underneath. Back when Lamont was facing some hard times during his early career in the drug game, she would go as far as putting him onto a connect and helping him find a stash house to store his drugs, money, and guns. After she did that for Lamont, he suddenly began to take over the Bronx in no time. During the 80s and 90s, that was until he caught a body back in 95. One of his workers had gotten caught stealing from him, so he decided to send a message to the rest of the crew by dismembering the man's body. Things really started to heat up once the feds tried to shut him down. Despite the pressure the feds put on Tracy, she remained loyal. When they tried to get her to snitch on Lamont, she even went as far as telling him to fuck off. That was when Lamont made her his ride-or-die chick. "Well, call me back when they tell you something," Lamont said, hanging up the phone. Lamont stood at 5'1". He weighed 220 pounds of pure muscle. He also had a dark complexion as well. Surprisingly, he was still deep in the game, at the age of 38. He also had a scar on the right side of his face due to a knife fight that he had at the age of 13 and had everyone scared of his presence. He controlled the Edenwald housing projects. The entire complex has been on lock since the very beginning of his career in the streets. Damn, son, that's fucked up. We gotta get that dude that did this to Slim, Lamont said. How are you going to do that and we don't even have any info on the nigga that shot him? T-Bone asked with a screwed up face. T-Bone had been best friends with Lamont since the 3rd grade. Much like Tracy, he was loyal to Lamont, not just because of their friendship, but because he took him out of the pits of poverty and plugged him into the world of wealth. If you saw Lamont walking around, it was more than likely T-Bone was around, since the two were inseparable, like Siamese twins, because of their brotherly bond that they had. By this time, T-Bone's Boost mobile phone rung, and he answered and talked to the unknown caller. By the expression on T-Bone's face, Lamont could tell that he had found some valuable info. Yo, Mont, we got a great lead on where this nigga lay his head at. T-Bone said. Are you fucking with me? Lamont said in shock. Would I be fucking with you at a time like this? T-Bone asked, answering a question with a question. Now, guys, the reason why I felt that chapter was important is because it introduces T-Bone and Lamont, but it also shows you Jamal's parents' death and the way that his family treated him and the reason why he's in the streets doing what he's doing. You know, that's the main reason. Jamal getting disowned by his family is what evidently led to his career as a stick-up kid. Next week, I'll be reading another chapter from my book and doing the same analysis with you guys. Again, By Any Means 3, Judgment Day is out now on Amazon and Kindle. Cop it. Cop By Any Means 1, By Any Means 2, The Ghetto Gospel. They're all out now. Cop them. Remember, you can hit me up on Facebook, the I Am Sean Hudson page. On Twitter, it's at RBG Literature. And remember my website, IamSeanHudson.com. Till next time, peace.